Here's Tomas, nice. Elena's back from Europe. Good to see you. Great to see you. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Let's see how we doing on time. All right, we'll wait. We'll give it 2 minutes. All right, schmoozing is allowed.
Yeah.
Schmoozing is now allowed.
Okay, thank you. By the way, Juliet last week threw the door home run
Hit it out of the park.
out of the park.
Hi, everybody.
Also, everyone, before we begin, this is your reminder that if you are in the room when you are speaking, please take the mic. So,
Take the mic if you're in the room speaking. Caroline, you know what? It's actually hard to hear you. You're a little low.
let me check.
You sound like far away.
Let me.
You don't think so?
Yeah.
Maybe it's my hearing.
Here, I'll increase my input volume. How about now?
Oh, much better, yeah. Uh-huh.
Incredible, great.
Okay, good.
So, Rabbi,
Yeah.
this
Me?
is my last Saturday here until Sukkot.
Who's saying that?
This is Amy. Amy from Tallahassee.
Oh, where are you going?
I'm going to Germany, Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, England, and Scotland.
So I don't understand why aren't you going to be at Open Book?
If I can come, I'll try, but I don't know where I'll be. I mean, I might be able to make it from England.
I'm teasing. If we see you, we'd be happy. Safe travels. It sounds amazing.
I'm spending the High Holy Days in Jonathan Sax's synagogue.
Wow, we're gonna study him today. That's amazing.
Okay. Well, I sometimes his wife is there, so I'll tell her you study her.
All right, everybody. I think it's now that we have more of a cohort. It's now time to begin. Okay, welcome to everybody in the room, on Zoom. Anyone new today? I don't see anybody new. Anyone new on Zoom? Here comes Marla. No. Okay, so here we are. Welcome to anybody who is new or hasn't been here for a long time. You don't have to out yourself if you don't want to. And let's do the blessing on the Torah, and then we will start to study Parshat Re'eh. Okay, everybody, Ephany, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddushanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu La'asok B'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to soak in your words. Okay, thank you so much. So tonight is Elul. Elul starts, right? The month before Rosh Hashanah. And it's the month in which the rabbis have designated, the ancient rabbis, the Talmudic rabbis of the Talmud, have designated for the project of tshuva, for repentance. But they did so in such a beautiful way. Elul they saw as an acronym, Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, for Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. So the project of tshuva then becomes a project of belonging, right? Of reattaching yourself to the whole. Right? So we've been, one could say, alienated, maybe starting with leaving the garden back in Genesis. And we need to be reconnected to God, to one another, even to ourselves. So that's the project. And in that spirit, I teach these texts today. We're going to be focusing on holiness and joy and looking at the ethical context for each. Okay, so I'm going to screen share. I'll try to screen share. Good morning, David Kurtz, Oswaldo. Good morning. Just about to Shabbat Shalom to the newcomers in the room. Hold on, I'm looking for. Just trying to screen share. Try this again. Sorry, this should work. Try again. Okay, it seems to have worked this time. Okay, shh. What is wrong with this? I don't know why I only, maybe this one works. Yes. Oh, full screen, let's see if that works. No, yes, I figured it out. Okay, here we go. So we're starting here from not from the beginning of the Parsha, but from Deuteronomy 12. And this first verse signifies a new section, perhaps a new speech, a new set of legislation, and just to remind everybody, in Deuteronomy, the Israelites are in the Straits of Moab, about to enter the Promised Land, and Moshe is giving them a series of speeches, 5 long speeches, to instruct them as to how they should live in the land. Okay? And just to sort of repeat what I've said other weeks, the first 4 books of Moses are written in the voice of the omniscient narrator, and this book is in the human voice. It's all in Moshe's voice, which is really a beautiful thing, because Moshe started off as the stutterer, right? As the person who could not speak. And here is a whole book of the Torah. One could say even the most important book in the human voice and in the voice of Moshe, right? So there's that trajectory, that sort of implicit narrative behind the narrative. Okay, let's hop in here. Verse 1 in chapter 12. Welcome. Here's the family right here. Eile hachukim v'mishpatim asher tishmerun la'asot ba'aretz asher natan Adonai Elohei avotecha lecha l'rishta kol hayamim asher atem chayim al ha'adama. So this is the introduction. These are the laws and the regulations that you are to take care to observe in the land that Adonai, the God of your fathers, has given you to possess all the days that you live on the land. So there's this emphasis certainly on laws and rules and regulations, but also on this land that's gifted by God, the God of your fathers, right? And maybe the God of your ancestors, so bringing in that past and that history, and then the emphasis of Asher Atem Chayim, that you are living al hadama, on the land, right? So this embodied existence, and what you need for this embodied existence on the land. So the first thing you should do is abed te'abdun et kol mekamot asher adu sham hagoyim. So you are to demolish all the sacred places. Here it says just hamikamot, but just the places, but the subtext is the sacred places. Asher abdu sham hagoyim, where the nations worshipped. Asher atem yorshim otam et Elohehem al Haharim, Haramim, Va'ot, V'tachet Kol Eitz Ra'anan. Where the nations that you are dispossessing serve their gods on the high hills and on the mountains and beneath every luxuriant tree. So the idea here is that you come in and you destroy all vestiges of their worship. And we're going to get into that a little bit more specifically. And I will say that especially today, that's a disturbing idea. Now you come in and you just like, there's not a sense of multiculturalism, there's not a sense of respecting each other's, worship and sanctity. No, you come in, you destroy in order to establish your God and your religion. Welcome, welcome. What?
The good old days.
Beautiful, Rob. Beautiful, Rob. Beautiful, 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 beautiful idea. Rob's good old days.
And they sure may do together.
Okay. V'nitatztem. It gets even better for Rob. V'nitatztem et mizbechotam v'shibartem et matzevotam v'ashrehem tisrafun ba'esh v'psilei Elohehem tigadeun v'ibadatem et shamam min hamakom hahu. Verse 3. You are to wreck their altars. You are to smash their standing pillars. Remember the pillars, which we're going to in a minute. They're asherot.
Tree goddesses.
Thank you. So, which Rabbi Jill Hammer is very into, the tree goddesses. Sacred poles you are to burn with fire, and the carved images of the gods you are to cut to shreds, so that you cause their name to perish from that place. So we're going to get into this idea of name and names of gods, and the name of Yud He Vav He, and an idea that repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself in Deuteronomy, which is God causes God's name to dwell. And we'll see one example of that in the next verse, which sent me on a whole journey, which I'll explain in a minute. So verse 5, Ki im el hamakom asher yivchar Adonai Elhechem mikol shivtechem. So rather to the place that Adonai your God chooses from among all your tribes, to put God's name there, to have it dwell. I'll read the Hebrew in a minute. You are to inquire and are to come there. So there's the idea in Deuteronomy of the centralization of worship, right? In other books, particularly in Genesis, there's a sense that you could have God, you could sort of establish a sacred altar and worship God anywhere. But here you have to come to one place. But what's interesting about Deuteronomy, it doesn't tell us what that place is. That emerges later on, right, in the books of the prophets, but not here. Okay, so now the key phrase. Lasum et shemosham, to place God's name there, to do what? L'shichno, to dwell. So let's have that phrase in our minds. To place God's name there, to dwell. Interesting. What in the world does that mean? Okay, hold that thought. Uvata shama. L'shichno, tidrashu uvata shama. You are to inquire and are to come there. So this sense of you are to inquire, tidrashu, reminds me of Rebecca, right, back in Genesis, right, 5 books ago, when Rebecca went to an oracle to inquire of God what was going on in her pregnant belly. So you're to put God's name there, to dwell, and then somehow you're to inquire there, and you are to go there. Okay, so then I started wondering, what in the world does it really mean? I never really considered this phrase before. What does it mean to place God's name there to dwell? And I think it occurs 20 times in Deuteronomy, 20 times. Like God causes God's name to dwell. Different iterations of it, and we'll see one more in our text today. And I went on a little excursus. Like, what does this mean? And most of the commentators and most of the scholars say it's just another way of saying God's presence. And I was not satisfied. It's like, why use these specific words if it only means God's presence? What is it about making God's name dwell? So then I found one essay that I shared with Asher Chaim. It's like, oh, this is interesting, which satisfied me. Because it made sense of the specific words. Now, the essay was impossible to understand. Asha and I agreed with that, about that. But I understood enough to understand that this essay was making sense of it in a very specific way. So I'm going to take you now into the realm of biblical history. I'm usually in literary interpretation, but this is like a combination of biblical history and literary interpretation. So I'm taking you on this journey with me because I thought it was really interesting. Like, how do you make sense of words in the Torah? Right? And how do you insist? You know, and I have to confess, I kept asking ChatGPT, okay, what does it mean? I'm like, no, that doesn't work for me. What does it mean? No, look at this. And it's like, and then ChatGPT said, no, I'm sorry, it means presence, that's it. I'm like, no! Right? So I'm fighting with ChatGPT. And ChatGPT did not bring this up for me. So, shows you still need a human being here, right?
Yes.
So far. Maybe in a year from now I'll say something different.
It's an idol.
It's an idol. It's an idol. Oh, well, that's a whole conversation we can have. I'll probably give a sermon about it soon, but right now we're not going to have that conversation. Is it an idol? It is an idol. I don't know. Let's talk about that later. Okay, so here is something from the ancient Near East, from the Assyrians, and it's an archaeological finding. So it says the stela. Now the stela, it's a matseva. It's a stone that stands erect, right? Of Shalmaneser, who was a king who lived then, discovered at Tel Abtah. You can see I'm out of my depth, but I'm still sharing it with you because I think it's interesting for us to think about together. Like, what makes a satisfying interpretation, right? Commemorating his founding of a new city in the desert, states. Okay, so now think about the first few verses that we just looked at. As for my sela, or matseva, you must not remove it from its place. Put it somewhere else. Or you must not remove it from its place or put it somewhere else. You must not put it in a taboo house. So a taboo house, I looked this up, I don't totally understand what it means, but it seems to mean something about like a place of curse, that like a place, like a sacred place, but a place of curse, and you're not supposed to go into it. You must not smash it, you must not cover it with earth, you must not throw it into water, you must not splash bitumen on it, you must not burn it, you must not erase my written name. As for the one who alters my inscription or my name, may the gods Ashur, Shamash, Marduk, and Adad, the great gods, not have mercy upon him to his utter destruction. The language sounds a little familiar, right? Erasure, name, destruction. Okay, let's see what the author says, who is Sandra L. Richter, and you can read the whole essay if you want to. There's the link. She says, as we have seen, to efface someone's name, i.e. an inscription, from a monument, was to claim their monument or the heroic act, structure, or territory marked by that monument as one's own. So in other words, a name denotes that it's their territory. Right? How do you mark a territory? Right? You build a house. We know how dogs mark territory. You mark a territory, right? So that's what, right. So in order to take over someone else's territory, you efface their name. Deuteronomy 12:1-3 is commanding Israel to do just that by removing the names of the deities of Canaan from the monuments of their sacred sites. So get rid of everything that was there before and establish yourselves. Once the inscribed names of the Canaanite deities are effaced, and thereby their claims to both those cult sites and the territory of Canaan eradicated, the name of a new deity, Yud-He-Vav-He, is to be inscribed at his sacred site. In the human political arena, such actions would communicate that a new king has claimed the territory and or accomplishments of their predecessors. In Deuteronomy, the message of placing the name is the same. So, okay, so I just took you on my little journey, and I really shared with you my process of like trying to figure out what this means. So I'm going to stop for a minute and see how this lands for you. Is it satisfying? Is it interesting? Did it make sense? People who know more about biblical history in the ancient Near East are welcome to chime in and add and teach us. So here we go. Okay, Wendy, stand up and go near a microphone.
Pass it.
There's no microphone on that side?
Here. Should we do that?
Pass that one open.
I think what's very interesting in Deuteronomy, as opposed to any of the other 4 books, that in each chapter, to a greater or lesser extent, speaks about idol worship or avodah zorah. And
Lots of idol worship.
and
Lots of destroying idol worship.
right, and this is reiterated in the Talmud, because there's like multiple tractates on idol worship, avodah zorah, and also reiterated with the extensive amount of time that Maimonides spends in the Mishnah Torah talking about avodah zorah and idol worship. And I think the concept is because this was such a monotheism, was such a unique and different idea, that it just seemed very easy for the people to become assimilated and to fall in. Like they
Yeah, let me just see if I'm understanding what you're saying. So it's a revolution,
yeah,
and to establish a revolution, you need a context that supports it.
correct,
Right? So I'm thinking about this, like even psychologically, like if you have someone who's an addict or an alcoholic and they go to the 12-step program, it begins to build a new context for them. Like you need a new context so that you can change. So Wendy's saying it's so important to get rid of all that, because otherwise for the Israelites, monotheism would not take hold.
correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. That's a really interesting point. I'm wondering, Asher Chaim, my chavruta, if you want to add anything. I'm going to call on Asher Chaim since I shared a little bit of my process with him this week.
If I can give, oh, my camera's messing up again, sorry. If I could just give a little grammatical quibble.
Quibble.
The
Quibble
verb,
with
the verb
Sandra or with
l'shakain.
me?
I'm sorry?
With Sandra or with me? Who's the quibble with?
Earlier, the verse you quoted is l'shichno tidrashu.
Uh-huh.
And I think in that verse, shichno is actually a noun. But l'shakain shemo, to establish God's name, is a verb, and that occurs all over in the same parsha.
Okay, so does
Okay.
that make a difference? That's great. Does that make a difference right now?
Just a grammatical point.
Got it.
Now, as far as placing the name, I would note, in light of what Wendy just said, that avodah zarah is not a concern in Sefer Breshit, where it's a family, but it's not a concern in Shmot, Vayikra, or Bamidbar, except for a couple of, yes, the golden calf is an issue, but there's no general prohibition, laws about prohibiting idolatry, as much as you find in Dvarim. And I think it's because we're entering a different phase of the history of the people, and it will become much more important. Moshe seems to be positing after his death. This is his.
It's one of his fears for sure.
Yeah, and this is his ethical will, if you will.
Uh-huh. It's his
Dvarim
ethical
as the
will.
ethical will.
Yes, I will. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's all.
That's it?
That's the only productive stuff I have to add now.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you so much. Okay, in the room. Just make sure you're near a
Do I
mic.
have to go to that?
Yeah, go to that.
Here, but you can.
Well, you can go to that.
I've got it right
You can
here.
just take that, yeah.
Okay. So I liked what the gentleman just said, the phase, because I was thinking along the lines of a new phase, that idols are physical, right? Idol worship involved a
Except if it's
figurine,
AI, yes,
a
correct.
figurine.
Uh-huh.
And a name is not physical.
Well, a name here is, according to this archaeological evidence, it actually is physical.
In the sense of
It's
chopping it,
inscribed-
inscribing
it's
it.
inscribed on a monument.
Okay,
So it's physical.
it's physical, but it's a step away from a personality.
Okay.
The idols all had very specific identities, personalities, methods of worship. It's almost like moving from a body phase, a physical phase, into a cognitive phase, which did end up foretelling the evolution of the way we pray.
Interesting. There is a move away from embodiment overall. Yeah.
So I'm not so sure how to continue that, but.
Uh-huh. I think it's another piece of context here. I think it's helpful. Thank you. Okay, Ben, and then we're gonna move on.
Good Shabbos. I'm struggling with perhaps a very naive and basic tension here, which is that Yud He Vav He has been, been able to rain down manna, protect the Israelites, deliver them to this place, and now there needs to be seemingly this partnership where human agency is much more apparent in order to destroy these idols. And in order to destroy idol worship, that humans, rather than Yud He Vav He themselves, need to be involved in order to eradicate this name and make God's name dwell. And I think for me that I'm curious how we understand that. Why is it that human agency, which is so messy and so fallible and so on, needs to be involved in making God's name dwell? Is it about the permanence of that? Is it about this psychological piece?
Yeah, let me address that. So I think that's a great question, and also points to the evolution in the Torah, in the human-divine partnership. So if you think about Exodus, right, God takes out the Israelites, right, on eagle's wings, and then feeds them manna and gives them water, and basically takes care of them. And going into the promised land signifies a whole different stage in their evolution. They are supposed to move from this sort of childlike identity to being full partners and establishing, I think, Ben, this is really important, establishing God's name, right? Like really like making sure that they take ownership of this covenant and actively sort of inscribe it and manifest it. Sarah. Wait, Ben, did that explain? Does that?
I think it gets me 60% of the way there.
What's missing?
I think it's sort of it's this question about how they manifest it, which it seems to like involve a daily practice, but it also seems to like, I feel like, involve this eradication and replacement, right? Like in their minds. And so I'm just wondering why does Yud He Vav He need their name physically in a place to replace the idols' names in a way that we just described, right?
So, right. So the question is, does Yud He Vav He need it, or does Yud He Vav He or Moshe think that the Israelites need to do this to establish the religion that God wants them to establish. Okay, I'm going to go to Sarah and Adel, and then I'm moving on.
What this is making me think of, and it's
Yes.
quite idiosyncratic,
Yeah.
is God making the world with words. And so
God making the world with words,
And
right?
I'm
The
like,
name.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
And so is this another manifestation of that? God and the Israelites hand in hand making the world with words
Yeah.
inscribed.
Yeah, let me just respond to that. And it's not only any word, it's God's name,
God's
which has
name.
infinite power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there another piece of your comment?
No, that was it.
No, that's really strong. Right. So, in order to establish this new religion and for human beings and the Israelites to make, I'm not taking any comments, but I'll take your comment later. They have to establish the primacy of Yud He Vav He in their midst. Okay. Beautiful, Sarah. Thank you. Adel.
Hi, good Shabbos, everyone. So I'm looking at to place his name there, to have it dwell. And when I look at the Hebrew, Lashum et Shemo Shem Leshichno, I'm taking the liberty to do Lashum et Shemo Sham Lasum et Shemo Sham Leshechino.
Ooh, beautiful. Okay, tell everybody how you're reading that. So Adel's doing a little Hasidic twist here.
Yeah, because we know that the Shekhinah is here in exile with us. So Hashem is placing the Shekhinah here with us as well. So here we have the indwelling Shekhinah presence in that place.
Beautiful. So I'm gonna take us right into a Hasidic interpretation, which I also felt like met the actual language of the Torah in its interpretation. Sorry, I could not find this in Hebrew. This is 18th century, I think, Polish rabbi, Degel Machaneh Ephraim. I'm sure Joe can pull us in. Number 3, who says, when one studies the Torah for the sake of God, so they're doing a little linguistic play here that my chavrita Rabbi Sharon taught me this morning. It's Torah Lishma. Now, Torah Lishma usually means Torah for its own sake. It's a big value in Judaism. But according to the Hasidic masters, it means Torah for the sake of God's name. Lishma, Lishem, right? So they're playing with that here. And in order to keep God's commandments and abstains from what is prohibited and pronounces the letters of Torah, which are names of God, it's as if the divine presence, the Shekhinah, dwells upon them. So this is a kind of play on this idea of causing God's name to dwell, that each of us become, as it were, a makseva, right? A monument with God's names through studying Torah or through meditation, so that God's presence dwells on us because we've literally incorporated their name within us. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah. It's a beautiful symbolic understanding of this ancient text, right? Later understanding of this ancient text. So you could say, the archaeology makes it really physical and really political, and it's hard to find the spirituality in that. And then I'm not taking other comments yet. We're going to do more text, and then I'm going to take Oswaldo and Tony. And then later on, it becomes more sort of spiritual, abstract, psychologized, but the Hasidim do it in a way that's also embodied. So it's really a fascinating movement. Okay, I'm going to go on now with the text, and then I will call. What? Oh, I didn't finish it? No. Oh, so sorry. No, I did.
No?
No, I
Oh,
finished it. The rest of it is just,
that's not important?
is just context. I think.
Oh, yeah, you're right, you're
You
right.
see that?
Sorry,
Okay.
yeah.
That's okay.
I do.
Okay, so we're now moving into joy, which is, hold on, I'm looking for, let's see if this is it. Trying to screen share, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry, let me try again. Aha, this looks like it. Okay, here we go. All right, so now we're continuing in the Torah, in our Parsha. Asher Chaim, do you feel like reading?
Thank you. והבאתם שמה עולותיכם וזבחיכם ואת מעשרותיכם ואת תרומות ידכם, and you shall bring there
So
your
to the centralized place of worship, that place, wherever that is.
your burnt offerings and your zevach, your edible offerings and your tithes and the gifts of your hands, v'nidrechem v'nidvotechem u'chorot b'karchem v'tzonechem, and your voluntary offerings and pledges and the firstborn of your cattle and sheep.
So all the gifts, all the things that you're obligated to bring, and also, you know, just random, like all forms of gifts, right? Also including free will offerings. So ones that are mandated and ones that are not.
ואכלתם שם לפני אדוני אלוהיכם, ושמחתם בכל משלח ידכם, אתם ובתיכם, and you shall eat them there in the presence of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, and you, plural, shall rejoice in all of the mishlach, efforts of your arms, you and your households, asher berachecha Adonai Elohecha, which or whom Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, has blessed.
So let's think a little bit about the context here for joy or happiness, right? It's utterly communal, right? Number one, it's in the context of gifts that are obligated and like supporting the priests and supporting the Levites and all the mandated offerings. So it's all about offerings, and then you eat and you're happy, right? And there's a sense of blessing, and there's a sense of doing this before God. Okay, so we're going to do a few texts now about joy, like really digging into joy and what joy is in Torah, and then I will take some more comments. So Jonathan Sachs, who can read? Someone in the room or on Zoom? Elena, since the microphone is right with you, would you do that?
I would.
It's number 5.
Oh, thank you.
Take your time to find it. So this is Jonathan Sachs, may his memory be a blessing, who's the chief rabbi of England and really writes beautifully and incisively about the Torah.
Communal rejoicing. Simcha is usually translated as joy, rejoicing, gladness, happiness, pleasure, or delight. In fact, Simcha has a subtle meaning that is untranslatable into English. Joy, happiness, pleasure, and the like are all states of mind, emotions. They belong to the individual. We can feel them alone. Simcha, by contrast, is not a private emotion. It means happiness shared. It is a social state experienced as a we, not as an I. There is no such thing as feeling simcha alone. Each time the word simcha is used in Parashat Re'eh, it refers to a communal group experience of joy. The message Moshe is giving here is that the nation will come together naturally through crisis, catastrophe, or impending war, but the challenge and the ideal is for unity to also happen in good times through collective celebration in the presence of God.
Thank you. Beautiful.
I think we should do audiobooks too.
What did you say, Tamar?
I said she should do audiobooks. Very well.
She's a beautiful voice. You should hear her singing voice too. Oh no, I've embarrassed her. I'm sorry. Okay, so I forgot to give this context, which I talked about in my sermon last night, which is really amazing. So the word simcha, I think, occurs 16 times, or 14, I think it's 16 times in the entire Torah, entire 5 books of Moses. Once in Genesis, once in Exodus, once in Leviticus, 14 times, 12 times, okay, forget the math. Around 12 times in the book of Deuteronomy. And the point is, 7 times in this parsha. 7. So this is the parsha, joy. And I think it has so much to teach us about joy. And just to take a step back and go back to my introduction, because some people came a little late. Elul, right? Tonight starts Elul. And we think of repentance often as a grim process. But the rabbis put it in the context of love, right? Elul standing for I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. I also want to put it in the context of joy. Because if we're going back, if we're making tshuva, if we're going back to where we belong and have some sense of human and Jewish belonging, it's an occasion for joy. Right? See what kind of joy we can feel as a community, especially in these brokenhearted times. Okay, so now joy. It's so interesting. So I started doing some digging again, little traveling, down a path to understand what does joy really mean and where does it come from. So it comes from a really interesting sort of etymological development. Now, words historically sometimes have multiple meanings, right? Like a semantic range, and it's all sort of like a trunk of a tree, and then different letters pop up for one root and different letters pop up for another root, and the words become more specific. Did that make sense at all?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Well, we'll see it in action in a second. So let me introduce you to two biblical verses, one from Psalms and one from Proverbs, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So here it says, and it's very, very famous, and there's a song, Or Zarua Lat Tzadik Uli Yishrei Lat Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Lat Tzadik Uli Yishrei Lev Simcha. So light is sown for the righteous and radiance for the upright. But the word is simcha. So why is it translated as radiance? Right? A form of light. The reason it's translated that way is that in Psalms, there's a kind of parallelism, someone could say it better than me, and we understand that the word or and the word simcha are parallel to each other. So one is translated as light and one is translated as radiance. Okay, it wouldn't be happiness because it has to match the first part of the verse. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Now here it is again in Proverbs. Or sadikim yismach v'ner rishaim yid'ach. So the light of the righteous is radiant and the lamp of the wicked is extinguished. So somehow the yismach has to be about light, since in the second part of the verse it's about a lamp being extinguished. Can't be joy, because it doesn't make sense here. So now I did a little etymological detective work with something called Balashon, which is basically, helping us understand the history of word roots in Hebrew. It's a great website. And what seems to have happened in Near Eastern cognates is that there was one root that meant grow, that meant light, and that meant joy. And then, so
Say that again.
light, joy, and growth. Okay, light, joy, and growth. But then that common root, or that trunk, split off, branched off to different words, which is the reason why we have litzmoach, to grow with a sadi, and lismoach, joy. But those meanings, the range of semantic meanings were united and then split off. Which is really interesting, because if you think about those meanings together, happiness actually means to flourish. Right? To grow, to be full of light. I know when I see my husband very unhappy, I say to him, oh, the lights have gone out. And I could see it on his face, the lights literally go out. Like, where's his light? You know, and I feel that when I'm depressed, right? The lights have gone out. Where's the light? Where's the light? So you can read that. It's hard to understand, but that's my understanding of the history of this word. And you see remnants of it, and you also see in Aramaic, as we just saw in Psalms and Proverbs, where it means light as opposed to joy.
For what it's worth, it's the same in English, like lights into lights.
Lights and delights.
It's exactly the same.
Tomas, that's beautiful. Light and delight.
And also, like joy it simply means illuminated, which is why we have
Joy simply means illuminated. Wait,
Yes,
I want you
jewel.
to speak. I want you to speak nearer, because what you're saying is so important.
Just that somehow the pattern is the same in English, as in this etymology, that light and delight are related, because joy is that which lights you up, and that's why you have jewel, like jewelry, is
And
also...
joy and jewel are related?
Yeah, it's the same word, if you go backwards. So it like sparkles, it lights up.
That's so beautiful.
Also gaudy, things that are shiny.
Wow.
Like it's all the same word.
Wow.
So, yeah,
That's very cool.
I mean,
Thank
I'm a
you
big
so
believer
much.
in etymology, as you know. But.
Okay, Asha Chaim's going to help us with this. Go ahead.
Yeah, there have been many times that we've had two words that share two out of the three root letters.
Exactly. You keep teaching us that. Yes.
Yeah, so this is the same phenomenon.
Yes. Exactly. So what happens is litzmo, the root for litzmoa, to grow, and lismoa, to be joyful, right? Have two of the same three letters of the root. But the samech becomes a sadi in growth. Got it? Good? Okay, good. So we're going to do a little more on joy, and then we're going to go back to the people who raised their hands. Okay, so this is, to me, this is a gorgeous passage about holidays and joy and justice. And note that it's addressed, unlike the previous passage, to the individual, but you'll still see that joy is manifest only in collective settings. Okay, so think about how joy functions here, and I want to think with you what joy means in the Torah, or continue to think about that, and what that means for our lives. Like, is this kind of joy possible? And again, I'm not talking about individual happiness, it's a whole different thing. And is it possible now? Like a friend of mine who actually did some amazing work on the border and saw horrible things said, you know, we have to remain joyful somehow amidst the heartbrokenness. We have to bring the joy, right? So I'm meditating on that. Is that true? And how do we do that? And how do we? Again, I talked about it last night. How do we spread the joy? Like, what does that mean? And maybe being joyful or being illuminated naturally spreads the joy, because you're just like a flashlight, and other people can see. That's a thought. I just thought of it. Okay.
Well, also, the idea of bringing light into the world is also a joy.
Ooh, or lagoyim. Ooh, so light into the nations. The Israelite nation, our people, is supposed to be the light into the nation. Wow, that's beautiful.
Oh, one more etymology I can resist. Menorah just means something from which a light is. So it's the same root as minaret, which is a lighthouse or a tall tower.
Oh, menorah and minaret. But menorah is a Hebrew word, so I'm
the
so
thing on
confused.
which the light is hung.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Lots of etymological connections. I love it. Okay, Asha Chaim, can you do this one again?
Thank you. But can I digress for just a moment? The Hasidic saying, mitzvah gedola lihiot b'simcha. It is a great mitzvah to be immersed in simcha all the time. Here gets the Saxian twist of, it doesn't mean you have to feel cheerful all the time, but it means you have to be involved in simcha activities, meaning being part of the community and celebrating together and the joy of giving. And okay, the asita.
Let me say one thing about that. So yes, Deuteronomy is providing us with context for joy, opportunities and communal context for joy. And I think that's what, I don't know if Jewish life is all about that, Jewish life is about that. Context for joy. Just this morning, right? Services, Torah study, communal context for joy. Multiple communal contexts for joy. And sometimes I just want to acknowledge that it's really hard because you go to Purim or you go to Simchas Torah, right? The joy of the Torah, and you're not feeling it. And the rest of the community is. So that can be a really painful experience. And when it works beautifully. Okay.
ועשית חג שבועות לאדוני אלוהיך משאת נדבת ידך אשר תיתן כאשר יברכך אדוני אלוהיך. You shall make a pilgrimage feast of weeks to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh your God. Misat, according to the sufficiency of the free will offerings of your hands, of what God, that you will bring as Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh your God blesses you, or commensurate with what Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh blesses you.
So just note, again, we're going to have joy in the next verse, that joy and gift giving are connected. So actually giving, right? Giving to the collective, giving to the community, taking care of the community's needs, right? Spontaneous giving. That's all related to joy. It's not, again, it's the opposite. Well, I don't know if I said this before. Well, in some sense, it's the opposite of this society, which is all about getting to feel joy and happiness, like building another house and having that third vacation house and having the this and having the that. But no, giving, right? Giving is what creates joy. Wow. That's an idea. How might we practice that? Okay, go ahead.
ושמחת לפני אדוני אלוהיך, אתה ובנך ובתך ועבדך ואמתך, and you shall, simcha, rejoice in the presence of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh your God, you and your son and your daughter and your male servant and your female servant. והלוי אשר בשעריך, והגר והיתום והאלמנה אשר בקרבך, along with the itinerant Levite in your gates, and the foreigner, and the orphan, and the widow in your midst. במקום אשר יבחר אדוני אלוהיך לשכן שמו שם. At the place that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, will choose to plant God's name there.
So notice how radically egalitarian this is, right? Your son and your daughter, your manservant and your female servant, the stranger in your midst, the Levite, the orphan, the widow. Like, this is about inclusivity. This is about those who are on the margins of society, those who need, right? And you are to rejoice with all of them, which means that that the generosity that we just mentioned is essential, because those people ain't going to be happy if they don't have enough. Right? Everybody has to have enough. It's about abundance. I think abundance is like a strong theme traveling through all of this.
וזכרת כי עבד היית במצרים ושמרת ועשית את החוקים האלה. And remember that you were a servant, slave in the land of Mitzrayim, and therefore observe and do these otherwise incomprehensible laws. חג הסוכות תעשה לך 7 ימים, ואוספך מגורנך ומיקבך. You shall have a pilgrimage holiday of Sukkot, tabernacles, shacks. Make it for you for 7 days when you are harvesting from your it's grain and grapes, I think. V'samachta v'chagecha, and you shall rejoice in your pilgrimage holidays. Ata uvincha uvitecha v'avdecha v'amatecha v'halevi v'hager v'hayatom v'halmana asher b'sharecha. You, along with your son and your daughter and your male servant and your female servant and the Levite and the stranger and the orphan and the widow in your gates. Shiv'at yamim tahog ladonai Elohecha.
So again, Sukkot was described that way, and now Shavuot was described that way. And this little phrase has actually become a beautiful song. ושמחת בחגיך, והיית שמח, ושמחת בחגיך. That we sing especially in the sukkah. And we're going to see the second phrase of that song in a minute.
The interjection. So as Rabbi Nachman, the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, said, it's a mitzvah to be happy.
Beautiful. It's a mitzvah I often fail at. What am I going to do?
Try to remember.
Okay. Okay, go on, Ashokaya.
Yeah, that was the quote I was trying to remember. Thank you, Basia. Shiv'at yamim tahog l'Adonai Elohecha b'makom asher yivhar Adonai. 7 days you shall celebrate to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, in the place that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh shall choose. Ki yivarechecha Adonai Elohecha b'chol tevuatcha u'b'chol ma'aseh yadecha v'hayita ach sameach. Ki, because or when Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, blesses you in all of your produce and all of your physical accomplishments, and you shall be nevertheless sameach, joyous, happy, whatever simcha means. Shalosh pa'amim bashana yera'eh kol zechurecha et pnei Adonai Elohecha b'makom asher yivhar v'chag hamasot u'v'chag hashavuot u'v'chag hasukot v'lo yera'eh et pnei Adonai re'tam. 3 times a year you shall appear, all of your males, in the presence of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, in the place that God will choose during the festival of Matzah and the festival of weeks and the festival of tabernacles, and you shall not appear to the presence of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh empty-handed. Ish kimatnat yado, everyone according to the ability of what they can give with their hands. Kivirkat Adonai Elohecha asher natan lach, commensurate with the blessing that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, has given you.
So that's really beautiful because the end is about like the capacity of every person, which is important. And also this idea of matnat yado, right? Matana means gift. I don't know how many of you read Lewis Hyde's gift, but the idea throughout all of this is that the gift is circulating, right? To the stranger, to the orphan, to the priest, to the Levite. You know, there's a moving gift throughout. And then receiving the gifts of joy. Okay, I see your hand also, Ram, and I'm going to get to you in a minute. So I want to do 2 things, call on some people, and then end with a beautiful piece by Rabbi Shannon and Annisfeld about the month of Elul and belonging. So Rashi says something really beautiful here about Vahiyita ach sameach, which is extra because we already heard about rejoicing. Right? It says only be rejoiced. But it says, Lefi pshuto ein ze lishon sivui. According to the plain meaning of this is not an obligation to be joyous. Ella lishon havtacha. It's a promise. It's the language of promise. In other words, if you do all this, you're going to be joyous. It's a natural consequence. It's a gift. It's a promise. Okay. Now I'm going to read this and then take some comments, and we're going to end with Rabbi Sharon's piece as a kavanah for the month of Elul. So I thought there's a beautiful little story and really relates to everything we've been talking about so far. Jonathan Sachs says, in 1968, it's from the same essay that I quoted from before, I met the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, of blessed memory, for the first time. While I was there, the Hasidim told me the following story. A man had written the Rebbe in roughly these terms. We're in text 10, by the way. I am depressed. I am lonely. I feel that life is meaningless. I try to pray, but the words do not come. I keep mitzvot, but I find no peace of mind. I need the Rebbe's help. The Rebbe sent a brilliant reply without using a single word. He simply circled the first word of every sentence and sent the letter back. The word in each case was I. Interesting. So it seems like part of what the Torah is telling us here in no uncertain terms, doesn't seem like, what the Torah is telling us here in no uncertain terms is that we function within a collective. We function within a community. And how hard that is to do in our times, not easy. To find the right community, to really connect. And even at Romemu, like I know I've been part of more traditional synagogues, there's a culture of, oh, will you come to my house for Shabbat? Will you come to my place for Shabbat? Like there's, everyone's inviting everyone else to, each other's homes for meals. We don't have that. It's a liberal community. It's harder to, have that happen. So we're always asking Romemu, how do we create community? So we welcome your answers and your ideas. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to call on the people who've been waiting so patiently. We have about 5 to 7 minutes for discussion, and I'm going to ask people to be brief. I see all your hands. Tony, Oswaldo, Rob, and then we're going to Richard. And Joe. Is this a hand? Yeah. Good, so you're on the list. I want to hear from Joe. Okay. Try to be brief so more people can speak.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. Just keep the collective in mind.
Okay, so Joy and Jewel.
Joy and Jewel.
And Thomas Traherne, one of the great Christian mystics.
Who?
Thomas Traherne, Traherene, says, every soul is God's jewel.
Beautiful.
And just a question that at least for me, underlies like a root of this whole discussion.
Yeah.
Is, are we not just describing in greater detail what is implied by each of us is made in the image of God? Especially when one thinks that from the mystic standpoint, we are nothing, there's only God, and God is an ocean of Sat Chit Anand, as the Hindus say.
So each of us are sort of an occasion for God's light.
Or waves on God's ocean, on the ocean of God, and
that
God
sense
is,
of belonging that sort of runs through the text. Beautiful.
It's the reality. It's
so
not,
it's a lens, it's a slant, it's an angle on that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so I was going to call on Joe, but he's gone. Okay, Oswaldo, Rob, and Joe, if you come back, we'll call on you. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll pass to Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
You sure?
Yeah.
Please.
No, I was going to say something at the beginning of the reading of
Yeah.
Deuteronomy
Yeah.
that related to anthropologically to where I'm from, of Ecuador. When the Spanish came in, there were all these different deities or different gods, and they just obliterated everybody. And then now the entire...
And they brought in Christianity, and they obliterated... Right, so it's...
And then forget the Spanish, they were already Catholics, Christians, but the entire nation in Ecuador, I mean, everybody identifies as being very Catholic, very Christian. So I could relate,
Yeah.
that.
And let me acknowledge that's a moment of tragedy for the people that live there.
Well,
just as it was...
Just like we said before, that was somebody's, the different points of opinion, because there were folks that were like literally killing, engaging in rituals that, from our point of view, would be considered, not acceptable. So there are different points of view.
Seen as what?
Like killing babies, sacrificing children.
I see.
Or,
so you're saying there's a reason we should obliterate?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's interesting how reading the first part of Deuteronomy, and actually when you go to Ecuador, you see these parts, and they're not anthropological, historical monuments, where these actual deities actually were there, and they're now big churches.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Well, what often happens is that the tradition that replaces the tradition that was destroyed or obliterated, the tradition that was obliterated actually finds its way into Christianity.
That's very true. Yes.
Finds its way into Israelite religion. It doesn't. You think you obliterate it, but you
right.
don't.
Yeah. Yes,
so that's kind of
true.
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And even that the fact that they planted their churches on the same sites means that they had a sense of the sanctity and the power of that place. Okay, Rob and then Joe.
That was a great intro into what I wanted to say. Thank you. This is a wonderful parsha. It talks about eradicating your enemies, and there is a concept of evil, and then it goes right into this beautiful shalom, with peace. But the truth is, when evil exists in the world,
But,
or you
hold on 1 second. It doesn't say anything here about evil.
no,
Not a word.
It said eradicate.
It does.
Yeah, eradicate. And
I'm just being careful with the terms and,
yes,
your reading.
But who they're instructed to eradicate is evil, okay, as determined by a greater power, and you can't have shalom if you live in the same neighborhood as evil. So you have this chance for this beautiful life, but he's saying, and of course we use, like you use the word baby killers, right? You can't live in the same neighborhood. There's no shalom if you're living in the wrong neighborhood.
Okay, so a few things about what you're saying. First of all, it says in verse 2, you're to demolish, yes, demolish all the sacred places. It doesn't say anything about killing people. Not here, it says in other places.
Yes.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, just remember that even though Amalek exists as a fundamental category of evil in the Torah, but the rabbis were very careful about our identifying Amalek in the world. We have to be very careful about saying that's evil. And you can understand why. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
I agree.
Oh, good. I'm glad you agree. Okay. Joe, and then Richard, and then Tomas. And I'm not taking seconds.
I just wanted to add to all this simcha happiness that a few psukim before this, all these mention of simcha talks about tzedakah. And it says it by tzedakah in that pasuk, lo yira, meaning you can't give tzedakah grudgingly without any evil or foul. You have to give it with truth. It doesn't say in the pasuk, but the Rambam, Maimonides, says you have to give this simcha.
So you have to give charity, which is not a great translation of tzedakah, with joy.
Right, you must give it with simcha, or else you're not.
Beautiful.
There's no kiyum, there's no permanence to the mitzvah of tzedakah, which is exactly what we're saying.
That's worth a shiur session in
it
itself.
continues on, and only a few psukim later, all about simcha.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Richard, Tomas, and Batya. I said no second things, but I lied. Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
In verse 16:11, Rabbi Mordecai Yosef of Itzbitz asks, why, in regard to Shavuot, is the orphan and widow mentioned as being bikir ka, amidst you, among you, not just inside your gates, as is mentioned for the other festivals? And his answer is that because Shavuot is the holy day for receiving the Torah, those who have suffered in childhood seem to grasp the Torah easier. There's a connection between the pain and neglect in childhood and the love of Torah. So regarding Shavuot, the Torah day, the orphan and the widow are amidst you or inside you.
Beautiful.
Not so on the others.
Beautiful. So that's a really interesting idea. Those who have suffered can understand the Torah more deeply. That's interesting, and it's worth digging into. Like, why would that be? So let me just raise that question. We don't have time to address it, but that's a really interesting connection. Tomas, Batya, yeah.
I really enjoyed your evocation of the good old days somehow. Because in some ways it's the labor of love. It's the juxtaposition of coming into the promised land and trying to transition into joy. Like one time out of 100, certainly in my lived experience, joy comes involuntarily as a kind of instant karma.
Joy comes when it will.
When it will, but one time out of 100 when it will, but I think 99 times out of 100, it's much more methodical. Like you have to sit down and count your blessings. You have to erase each one of those kingly names one at a time. There's an act of delivery.
And actively, as Ben was saying, establish the name of God.
Yes,
right?
I mean
it's calling upon our agency.
Yes,
Beautiful.
And it's not quite fake it till you make it, but you have to, nothing comes from nothing. It's not a blank slate. There's an emotion that preceded your joy, whether it was terror, fear, boredom, whatever.
Yeah.
And people were living in Canaan before we got there. And so acts of cultivation and sometimes even erasure are required to build a foundation for the next emotion.
So it makes me think of my friend who has a beautiful lake house and is married to a wonderful woman, and they have a great relationship. And she literally says, we're hanging out, she goes, I'm going to contemplate my good fortune. And then she goes and does it, right? And she has a lot of good fortune. Not that I don't, but, well, I don't have a lake house. No. Okay, Pacha. Pacha, and then I'm afraid, Mary, we're going to have to move on because I need to read the last text. I'm sorry. Okay.
One of the things we pick up when we come to service is the presence of the Holy Shekhinah.
The holy presence, indwelling presence of God.
So that one doesn't have to say, I feel lonely, I feel depressed, but to be in unison as we are right now.
Beautiful. And that's actually a great segue to the text I